Hello, I'm Ann Helmreich, the Dean of the College of Fine Arts at TCU. It's purple. And we are thrilled to be partnering with the Kimbell Museum and KERA's Art&Seek to bring you tonight's program. Now, I moved back to Fort Worth 2 years ago, and one of the first things I did was reset my card dial to KERA and start actually my donation to KERA as well, and my membership to the Kimbell. I start every day with KERA, and I drive home back and forth from the Kimbell, and I feel so privileged to have this museum in our community. At TCU, we've been working with the Kimbell for an extended period of time, many partnerships to strengthen and advance art history in the region, and many of our theater partners you're going to hear about today are also ones that TCU works with. I want to also thank Director Eric Lee of the Kimbell Museum, Nancy Edwards, and Jessica Brandup for inviting us to join this enterprise. TCU, the Kimbell, and KERA, this is a natural partnership because we share the same goals: to grow art audiences, to cultivate the next generation of artists, and to champion the relevancy and value of the arts in our region and beyond. State of the Arts Fort Worth identifies important trends and issues affecting North Texas artistic organizations and brings artists, experts, and scholars together for thought-provoking discussions. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Produced by KERA's Art&Seek in partnership with the Kimbell Museum and Texas Christian University College of Fine Arts. And I want to again thank the Kimbell Museum for hosting us, and also thank the Art&Seek team, Ann Bothwell, and our host this evening, Jerome Weeks. I feel like he needs no introduction, but just in case, he is the senior arts reporter producer for KERA's Art&Seek. He was the theater critic for the Dallas Morning News for 10 years, and then the paper's book columnist for another 10 years after that. He earned graduate fellowships at Columbia University and Berkeley, and has won numerous awards for his writings on architecture, theater, literature, and music. Please join me in welcoming Jerome Weeks. Thank you very much. Hand this off to you.
Thank you very much. I was just going to throw it out into the audience. Good evening, and thank you for coming out on such a lovely fall evening. The wind blowing the leaves, the cool air. At any rate, we are going to be talking about some new things, actually some old things as well in Fort Worth Performing Arts. Real quickly, I need to thank TCU, the College of Fine Arts, and the Kimbell Art Museum for hosting this. And I want to thank So Far Sounds. Immediately after our conversation, we encourage you to continue the conversation upstairs. So Far Sounds has a concert. A lovely musician will be playing for us upstairs afterwards. So please stick around and continue the conversation then. Many years ago, when I was in Austin, I brought a friend to the very first Alamo Draft House. That's where they started. If you're unfamiliar with them, they're one of the pioneers of serving liquor and food during movie screenings. And I didn't tell my friend that. We were interested in the movie. And he didn't understand quite what was going on, and he finally realized it. And he goes, "Oh, I get it. Beer during the film." And I said, "And nachos." And my friend said, "This goes down with the vinyl record and the electric guitar as America's contributions to culture." So we're not going to be talking about anything quite that earth-shattering this evening, but they are things that I think are innovative and interesting, and many of them are only happening in Fort Worth. So to introduce our panel this evening, I'll begin with Kathleen Culebro. Since 2000, she has produced plays in Fort Worth and New York, many of them world, US, or regional premieres.
Thank you.
She is also a playwright. Her work has been produced off-Broadway. She's taught screenwriting at TCU, and of course, she is the founding artistic director of Amphibian Stage Productions. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Dana Schultes has literally done everything at Stage West: actor, director, stage manager, business manager, sound engineer, sound designer, sorry, and soup cook. She also physically helped rebuild the facility that Stage West is in now. She was featured in our weekly series called Artist Spotlight, our profiles of North Texas artists. If you get a chance, I really suggest you go check it out. It was one of my better ones. And Dana is now the executive producer at Stage West. Dana Schultes. He danced with the Sadler-Wells Royal Ballet and the Royal Ballet, eventually becoming a principal dancer there, then director. He was awarded the office of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II in 1999. He ran the Houston Ballet from 1976 to 2003, and since then he has been the artistic director of the Texas Ballet Theater. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Stevenson. Thirsty work. I wanted to begin with something sort of digital and fancy, and something I literally had not heard before. The last time Dana and I spoke, there were people with cameras in your lobby, and they were filming an ad, but not for the usual venues. I'm wondering if you could talk about what you are trying to do.
I'd love to. As we all know, Fort Worth is a rapidly growing city. This whole metropolitan area is increasing. I think we're the seventh largest growing metropolitan area in the U.S. And we noted that, along with a growing interest in prestige TV, which would be, like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, things that are a little more meaty, intense, dark, that require a little bit more investment. And we knew that our programming lined up with that style in many ways. And so we decided to look into streaming media as a way to reach new potential patrons. So what we did was we created a commercial that highlights Stage West as a great spot to go for a date. Because for those of you who have been there, we have a cafe, we have beer and wine that you can bring in, we've got great theater, so it's an all-in-one evening. So what we're going to be doing with this commercial is streaming it on TV, on all of the OTT networks, and that's over the top, that's without any cable attachments or network attachments. It's do any of you stream media? Yeah, some of you see some. All of my media is streamed, and as is all of the people that I know and hang out with. And so when you're watching something on, say, Hulu or CNN or ESPN or TBS, any of those stations that you can stream through the internet onto your TV or whatever device you're using, you must watch the commercials. You can't skip them. They all start with one, and then about 7 minutes in, you get another 3 or 4. And if you try to fast forward, it'll let you move through the program, but it's going to stop you and make you watch the commercials. And many of those commercials are local. So what we've done is we have decided to invest a decent portion of our marketing budget into a commercial that will be the lead off of our season to introduce some of these audiences to Stage West through that streaming media service. We will also be using it on Facebook and through Google Ads, but we are hoping to reach people through that manner, and we will know if they see it and decide to bite, and if it's successful, because we've included a promotional ad that said, a tag that says you can put in Stage West TV. Can't remember exactly what the word is, when you buy tickets, and you'll get a discount.
And these live streaming services like Hulu, Sling TV, they will consciously program your ad for the kinds of shows, the kind of audience you're aiming for.
Yeah, I believe, and the other thing is that you can target the area. So we will have a 20-mile radius that we're working with, and they will be on those networks where you're going to be more likely to see people who, might be arts curious.
So in effect, you're going to be your local ad is going to be in the midst of national programming.
Yeah, it will be. It's pretty cool. We didn't know that was a possibility. We have a fantastic marketing director who digs and digs, and she is one of the smartest people I've ever known, and she saw this as an opportunity and seized on it. And what we will do is see if it works, see if it makes sense, and then if it does, then we'll continue along those lines with individual commercials that might highlight an individual show or an individual experience at the theater, like highlighting some of our patrons who come to the theater.
Well, continuing in the digital area, I wanted to talk to Kathleen about something you've actually been doing for a number of years, but I don't think people truly understand how unusual it is, and that is you co-present National Theater Live with the Modern Art Museum. For those, how many of you have seen National Theater Live? Oh, excellent, excellent. I don't have to explain that much then. In fact, this Wednesday, you'll be showing Angels in America Part 1, which I have seen and which I can highly recommend. Even if you've seen Angels in America, this is completely unlike any Angels in America I've ever seen, and I've seen 4 or 5. And just a week and a half ago, it was announced that this production with Nathan Lane is going to go to Broadway. So this Wednesday, you'll be able to see it before all your friends spend hundreds of dollars to see it in New York.
Right, you'll get to see it for $20. And you're probably all members of either the Modern or Amphibian, and then it'll be $15.
And what's unusual about this is that you can, National Theater Live essentially telecasts London productions all over the world. If you go online, you can put in your zip code and they'll tell you a nearby cinema. And I went online and I was checking, and I could not find another place that had a live theater and a modern art museum collaborating to show National Theater Live. Everything else is a cinema or a museum, and so I found that sort of odd. And I wondered, how did this happen? Why did it happen?
It happened because sometimes you just got to do things for yourself. I wanted it here in Fort Worth. I went to Dallas to see Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller in Frankenstein, and it was a full house. Mark Lowry was sitting right in front of me, and I just thought, why doesn't Fort Worth have this? Especially with a sold-out house, I thought, we really need to do this. So I've always had a great relationship with Tina and everyone at the Modern, and I talked to her about it and did a little bit of research, and expecting the distributor, which is a company called By Experience, to say, you guys are small potatoes, no, or there's some kind of a mileage limitation and Dallas covers it all, no. But they said yes, and I could not have been happier. We started out with very small audiences because people didn't know what this was. And now we have, our audiences have really grown and people absolutely love it. Whether it's Shakespeare or something brand new, you're never going to see a shoddy production. It might not be, you might say, well, that particular script, that's not for me. But you're never going to see a shoddy production at the National. And so it's always such a great investment of time. And I think I just feel very lucky that we have this partnership.
I wanted you to tell them about your kind of do-it-yourself manner in which you finally figured out how to do this.
It's very anticlimactic. I went online and just clicked on all the buttons at the bottom of the page, and it said for producers, and then it said how to. Is that what I told you before? Did I make it sound more interesting?
No, I just found it interesting and kind of fascinating that you just go online and start pushing a few buttons and wind up being a presenter of National Theater Live.
Yeah, I mean, I kept expecting the barriers to come up. And, you know, I have to give, I hate doing it, but I have to give credit where credit is due. And really, I tend to be more of a timid person who expects to find barriers, and my husband is a person who says, just try, see what's going to happen. And he encouraged me to go and ask the questions, and I did, and found it tremendously easy to do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being able to see them when I miss them at the end.
I mean, I would like to make it sound like we had to pass a test of amazingness, and then we got chosen, and it means that we're super special, but we
well, over
just
the
got
years,
lucky.
the venues have spread, and there's some in, like Durango Canyon National Forest, there's a venue. I don't know what in the world it's doing there, but you can watch National Theater Live there.
Well, and when I meet up with artistic directors from different parts of the country, I always tell them, look into this, find a way to do this. It's just a great way to reach out to other patrons who might not hear about you, but they've heard about the museum in your town, or they've heard about the National Theater, and it's a great way to cross-promote.
Ben, you're not only known as a choreographer and artistic director, you're also known as something of a company builder. The Houston Ballet Theater now is the 4th largest ballet company in the United States. And this season you're adding some dancers, 5 new dancers, to your company. And I was wondering about the size of the company. What difference does that make? What does that add? What is new?
Well, I think it really, the quality of dancing really. I mean, if you have a company of 12 people and they're fabulous dancers and you have great choreographers, they're going to choreograph for 12 people, I think it works. But in the case of having to do the old classics like Swan Lake and other, you need a bigger company. But what we want to do is that, because it keeps people on their toes, if you know what I mean. But it also keeps the company in shape. And people like that. It's like having an opera company and never doing Carmen or something. So we do keep the old chestnuts going there. But also our main thrust now is to get new and exciting choreographers and to grow the art. And so we're finding a couple of choreographers in our own company, Carl Coomer and Andre Silver. Carl Coomer's doing a major work this year, Henry VIII. So that's going to be exciting. He's done a lot of work on that. And then next season, Andre Silva is going to do something for us. But finding exciting, there's a lot of, actually the Royal Ballet now have so many exciting new young choreographers, it's amazing. So somehow digging out those people to come and work with your company gives them the chance to work in so many different directions. When I was a dancer, we were ballet dancers and there was modern dancers and we hated one another like that. Now what's happened is that sort of melded into one. Now dancers have to do everything, which I think is much more exciting. So they do contemporary works and classical works and all that. So we do it all really, or try to do it all, and particularly new works. I'm really excited about that, and I think it's important to do world premieres. Gives your company its face, you know.
So you're saying that with more dancers, you can offer a choreographer choices. There are people
Yeah.
that you...
Mm-hmm. I think if you've got a larger, I mean, strange enough, we have 40 dancers, which is not tiny, but it's not big, like the Bolshoi has 250 or something. So, but we can do with that, we can do the classics. Because quite a lot of companies, they want to do Nutcracker and Swan Lake and all that at some time, and then they have to sort of hire people for those productions, you know, other people. Whereas having your dancers working with you regularly, you develop a style within the company, a discipline, and so somehow that's very exciting to see dance. And what's wonderful when you get new choreographers coming in, they come in and they choose dancers you've not chosen. So someone that you've had, suddenly someone you think, oh my dear, they're good, and they're having a leading role in an exciting new ballet. So it's an adventure, an exciting one.
Speaking of world premieres, this season, one of them is from you. Matthew, if you could play the overture. It's from a Czech composer that I have to say I was unfamiliar with.
Martinu, yeah.
was written in the early 50s, but it sounds like it's something of the 19th century. It sounds
It
very...
is. Actually, it's the other, I'm calling it episodes because it's three of his pieces that are totally different. The second piece, the Adagio, is very contemporary. So somehow I've chosen three of his pieces. It's not a ballet that goes together like that. So it's like three separate episodes, different things to say. One's about the second movement's about the flood in Houston. So somehow it's tried to make it a bit current as it was.
One of the interesting things when I was researching them is that he's actually written ballet pieces. He wrote some 14 ballet pieces, but you're not using any of that music.
No.
Dana, you are doing something else that is unusual in Fort Worth. If it works, if it happens, I realize that there are complications and fundraising and all that to go through, but you'll be the first theater to have 2 performing spaces.
Right. Yeah, we're really excited. You know, there's so many wonderful different performing spaces in Fort Worth. Amphibians, circles, jubilees, and Stage West has the blessing of having more space to work with because we're in a huge warehouse space. And we had a section of the building that we weren't using, so we decided to start to make a second space out of it, a thrust theater. Our first theater is a proscenium. And what we would like to do with it is finish it out and not only use it for ourselves, be great for musicals. There's a lot of different music that I would love to see in there. It's got fantastic acoustics. But if I were able to have any kind of legacy for myself with Stage West, it would be not only renovating our current building and really putting us on the map as far as the programming that we do, but it would also be to have this second space and help to grow the fringe movement of art and theater and music in this town. Dallas is thriving in that way, but what they're poor on is space for the groups to use. And so I'd like to see if we can do the, if we build it, they will come thing and have a space that other groups could use and we could partner with them. I get 2 to 3 emails a week seeking rentals, and we can't accommodate them. They're from, one-person shows or large shows. Anything you can imagine from all over the country wanting to tour, and some local groups, as well as businesses who want to use the space. So I think that it would be a wonderful thing for Stage West. It would be a revenue line for us, which is always nice to help go back into the nonprofit. But to be able to be part of providing a space for the community to use in a variety of different ways would be great. I'd be very proud of that.
Other than the income stream, does having a second space help you, period? I mean, would you program differently?
Yeah, there are definitely, I think of myself as if I were a patron coming to my theater and I came regularly and I got to see a show on the proscenium, that's what I'm used to. And then one night I get there and the show is actually in this other space. It's completely different. Our main stage is very formal. It's got nice red cushy seats with cup holders, and then the thrust stage has all of the original texture of the building. The building is this big warehouse space that was a bus, not factory, but a garage in the 1930s. So it's got 18-foot ceilings and big old I-beams and a fantastic brick wall, and so we want to keep all of that original. We don't want to change that. So the feel in there is great. And as you know, if you go to a show, well, I think Amphibian does a great job of this, of filling out their space so that when you get in, you can feel the event. It's different each time, and you walk in and say, oh, I love how this feels. Well, it's the same with a venue. If you get to walk into a different venue, the feel of the evening is going to be a little different as well, and we would certainly utilize that.
You're going to enjoy it with your cup holders anyway. I like that.
Cup holders are great. Who doesn't like cup holders? And they're perfect for a bottle of wine, too, so you're good to go for the evening.
We're back to drinking during performances. And Kathleen, in speaking of utilizing spaces, it always seemed to me a kind of no-brainer. I didn't understand why more theater companies didn't do what you've done for a couple of years now, and that is use your theater for stand-up comedy when you're not doing theater. And yet, you're the only theater that is doing that in North Texas. So I was wondering why, how did that happen, and why is it not done elsewhere?
Well, I think that I wouldn't be taking something like this on if I didn't have Baron Vaughn as part of it. There's a lot of bad stand-up comedy. I know this is news to everybody, but there's a lot of bad stand-up comedy. So for any of us to suddenly start curating stand-up comedy and be able to put our stamp of approval on it would just completely water down our already limited time anyway. But what I had was this luxury of a friendship through a friend.
Who is a stand-up?
Who is a stand-up comedian. So Baron Vaughn, who's on Grace and Frankie and Mystery Science Theater 3000. Right before he had signed those contracts, but those shows hadn't started yet, he came through Dallas, visited his friend Brandon Murphy, who acts all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we happened to have Brandon in a show at the time, so he came to see Brandon in the show. And because Baron is a trained actor, he missed, for his stand-up, that nurturing side of the development process. So the way a comedian will develop his or her work is in the cruelest possible way, in front of a bunch of drunk patrons who may or may not actually be there to listen to what they have to say. And so what he wanted to create was a development process where a comedian can come in night after night and try out the material, fix it, hear, because the audience is an important part of it. So, standing in your bedroom in front of the mirror is not going to do it for you. And also, doing it this night in Fort Worth and then the next night in Cincinnati or 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks later in New York City is also not going to help you because it's just not enough continuity. So he tried it, loved it, and now he's selling it to his friends who are comedians. And what he tells me is there's nothing weirder to comedians than being treated well. They just don't understand it. They don't believe it can happen. And so he's trying to sell them this thing, and they're like, what's the catch? But they're trusting him, and so this year we had 2 developmental processes. But now I've had a couple of agents call me and say, my comedian wants to come and do this, and they're kind of big names. I know nothing about stand-up comedy. I enjoy it when it's amphibian, but I'm not a person who seeks it out. So I have to have my cadre of people in the know. And when I send them some of these names, they're like, oh my gosh, do not wait another minute, sign them on. So next year, in 2018, nobody else knows this except this room, we will be developing a one-woman show by a comedian named Jacqueline Novak, who, I didn't know this, but apparently she writes on everything and is a very successful stand-up comedian. This came through, not through Baron, but through Baron's agent, who now wants this for the rest of his clients. So
your advice for any other theater would be that they have to know something about the stand-up business?
I mean,
It is different?
It is completely different, and I wouldn't advise them to do it or not to do it because, they might already know about stand-up comedy. It's become such a big thing. You turn on HBO or Netflix, and it's all comedy specials. So it's, I would say for me, I couldn't do it without Baron. But what I would say is, it should fit your mission. And our mission is to identify, well, we have a lot of missions, but something we really try to do is to identify potential and then nurture it and make it flourish and help it to achieve its potential. And so that's the way we approach comedy. We're probably never going to be your regular every weekend stand-up comedy house. You know, we all need earned income, right? So if it turns out that way, great. It's a lot easier to just turn on the mic and say, and now, ladies and gentlemen, than to put on an actual play with costumes and sets.
Now, these are just one-night performances?
No, this is a week. This is 6 performances. You could buy a whole festival pass and come every night and hear how those jokes develop. You can talk to the comedian afterwards and say, you know, that joke was terrible. Or you know what that joke means?
Something you've always wanted to tell a comedian.
Right. And I know for a fact that, that our audience have informed some of the jokes through just little tidbits of information and even just through the reaction, through the lack of laughter or the laughter.
Ben, I wanted to go back to something that you were talking about earlier, and that is new choreography, new works. And you mentioned Carl Kummer, one
Yes.
of your dancers, who's choreographing a new work.
Henry VIII, yeah.
Matthew, can you play? He's choreographing Henry VIII to Gustav Holst's The
Holst,
Planets.
Planets, yeah.
Now, if you didn't know that piece, you obviously know that piece. It's clearly the inspiration for the Imperial theme from Star Wars. John Williams said, and if you've been in any planetarium in America, they play it. It's Mars from Gustav Holst's The Planets. But when I was asking your staff about this, they said that you actually have sort of a hands-off approach to the creation of such a new work, that basically this is Carl's baby.
It is, yeah. I said to him, if ever he needs to ask my advice or to go and do, I'm there. But I don't think you can go and tell someone else how to choreograph, because it has to be there, you know. And he's done a lot of work. He's already done 2 pieces for the company, earlier pieces. And you can hear by that music, perfect music to cut a head off to, isn't it? So it's leaves for Henry VIII. But he's done a lot of work. He's a very smart guy. And he's much smarter than I am. I mean, he's like really has it all planned out exactly what he's got to do. Costumes, and he's terrific.
So you were talking about the importance of new works in terms of what? Pushing the dance form? And isn't ballet sort of an established form? We have the steps, we have the dances. What do you hope to do with these new works?
Well, I mean, if they're, strangely enough, if you do a new work, if you find a new contemporary choreographer, and I think it's the same with other forms of the arts too, if they come in and they do a new work for you and it's incredible, it immediately in a way becomes a classic, because you're going to be doing it 50 years down the road, you know, if it's really terrific. So somehow you're hoping to find something that really has something to say, it's very strong in the development of your dancers, something they're going to really get into. It's going to stretch their imaginations and also attract your audience who hopefully will want to see something new. I hope that people, I mean, we all hope this, I think. I have to do it without cup holders too, it's so painful. But it's I think to get people to like the company enough that I love that company, I want to go back and see what they're doing, rather than going Swan Lake, Nutcracker or something, you know what I mean? But try and get an interesting enough in new works. I think it's terribly important. I had did a thing with the Art Museum in Dallas last year with the Pollock exhibition. That was very exciting to work with his works, and have to do something new and exciting like that. So, great.
Kathleen, when we spoke about this topic, I asked you, what did you think the arts needed to have going forward in Fort Worth? And I mentioned at the time that if you asked most dance groups, theater groups, music groups in Dallas, they would say spaces. Because of the real estate market, it's hard to find a space. It's hard to find an affordable space. But you said something completely different, partly because you have a space, I suppose. But you said something different. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, about what you felt Fort Worth needed going forward.
Sure, only if I get to say something positive at the end. So I think that we would probably agree, although we haven't discussed this together, that arts funding is very different in Fort Worth than it is in other communities, even within Texas. We're one of the lowest in arts funding, city arts funding in the state, in the country even. And the support that we receive is a lot lower. We're like 16th in major cities in Texas in funding. All of the numbers are suddenly leaving me. But most cities receive funding through the hotel occupancy tax. We do not receive that here. And there are just so many other ways that we are different. We don't receive funding. We don't receive much corporate funding. Corporate funding is huge in most other major cities. Not so in Fort Worth, and has been dwindling, has been decreasing significantly. And we've always counted on a small group of families to make up for that. And unfortunately, those families, their children are not staying in the area. So that interest is moving to other communities. And we're all suffering for it.
Would you agree, Dana?
100%. I think it's unfortunate. I will always say that a great city has great arts, and I do not understand why our city government would not invest in the arts in the city. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I think that the hotel occupancy tax would be a fantastic way to start. It doesn't have to be much. It could be 0.5%. It could be half a cent for each dollar, and that would make a significant impact on all of our groups. And I don't know how to bridge that gap. I look over at Dallas and I see all of the amazing, wonderful things that they're doing over there. Clyde Warren Park and all of the city public works. It's exciting and vibrant, and I'd like to think that we all want that sort of thing too, that it feels the same for anyone in their city, that if you are surrounded by great art, that your life is impacted by it, that it's a little better and more interesting. And I think that Fort Worth deserves that. So sure, we're all making it work as best we can on our shoestrings, but it does seem that some tax dollars would benefit Fort Worth in the long term, just growth-wise, and interest in having young people, more people, professionals come to our city, because they also recognize that art is interesting and they want to be part of it too. And I got to also say that you're absolutely right about the lack of corporate funding. It has dwindled significantly, and it started around 9/11. And at that point, I think Shakespeare in the Park was almost all city and corporate funded. And that was one of the last institutions in Fort Worth that had that benefit. And it has gone downhill ever since. I've been told repeatedly by different businesses that they give to the Arts Council and not individual companies. But I haven't necessarily seen the results of that affect us.
Ben, what has been your experience?
We had the hotel tax of that in Houston when I was there. I was in Houston for 27 years. And we had it there, which was very exciting the first couple of years. But then everyone, like Maisie's baton twirling and everything, became part of getting the stuff. And even sports said, well, we're performers too. So suddenly in the end, everyone who got before a public seemed to be so, what was a nice juicy amount at the beginning, dwindled down over the years. I don't know how it is there now, but I agree with you. I think, aren't you lucky here to have ladies like that who are so passionate about what they do? I think it's wonderful. Really. Really.
I mean, the arguments, you can list whatever tactic and we can give you the arguments, whether it's the educational benefits, the social benefits, the health benefits, the economic impact. I mean, we have presented and presented these arguments over and over, and they do fall on deaf ears. And that can be frustrating, particularly in a city that calls itself the city of cowboys and culture, which I always respond, are you really trying to say the city of cowboy culture? Because that's something different.
What we find difficult too is we can't find places to perform because there are no places with a stage, So apart from Bass Hall, there's very few places around where we can do an evening of dance. And so somehow, everywhere we go, we either have to, this is this is a perfect museum, but if this stage was just a bit bigger, somehow, you know what I mean? But I think it's, we're always trying to find somewhere to dance or a place to go, and everywhere we go, we have to have a floor that we have to put down. But I think we need more performance spaces. You being able to get your second.
We would love to have you over there.
Wonderful. Is there room for dance? Would there be room for
Yes.
dance?
Yeah, I think it'd be fantastic.
We're on, and the cup holders too. I'm so excited. Fantastic.
The worst part is there's no cup holders in that space.
No,
I'm so sorry.
I'll bring my own.
Okay.
You probably noticed we have cleverly put microphones on either aisle for your questions. If we could bring up the lights a little bit, Matthew, if you have any questions for our panel about Fort Worth Performing Arts. But I suspect you could probably speak from your seat, but if you want to use the microphones, you can use those to drown me out.
Don't everybody get up at once.
Yes, sir. While he's getting to the microphone, quick.
I'm 28, yeah. How old are you people?
No.
You open it up for any arts question, and I think it's a real desert for movies.
True.
Yes, sir.
I want to follow up on the space question. Bass Hall, we know, is highly programmed and not an inexpensive place to perform. Dallas has the Dallas City Performance Hall, which really fills the gap between the Winspear and the smaller theaters. What kind of performance space would suit your company in Fort Worth? How big? How many seats?
I think I think a 1,000-seat theater would be good. It's having the space on the stage. It's a very nice question, thank you. They have the Wiley too, which is very interesting, new theater over there. So there's the Wiley, there's the Old Majestic, there's City Performance Hall, there's the Winspear Opera House, there's the Fair Park. So there are a lot of places over there where you could put on your tutu and go over there and do something. I'd have a 9-9, I wouldn't have a tutu. But we're desperately for places here. Strange enough, it seems like depressing that, we feel the arts is but somehow Fort Worth is an exciting place. And so somehow I feel when you talk to people, they really want the arts, and they say, whatever you say, yes, that's a good idea. I think people are for it. It's just getting the people behind it, isn't it, really? Mm-hmm. And it takes a group of people to get together and go forward. But Bass Hall is beautiful, but there's so many things going in there, that we can't get the dates. And then the same, we're a resident company there, and in the Windsor Opera House, which is beautiful in Dallas, but we can't get enough dates in there so.
In fact, this season, you're performing a number of productions here in Fort Worth and not in Dallas because you couldn't get dates there? Is that correct?
Yeah, we do Dallas in here, but we can't get the dates we would like to get there. So somehow, you don't want to perform on Christmas Day or something, So.
I also want to respond to the question, to the comment about just cowboy culture in Fort Worth.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Eric Lees, the director of the Kimbell.
Where else in the United States do you have a town the size of Fort Worth with the museums that you have here in Fort Worth? This cluster right here, the Amy Carter, the Modern, and the Kimbell, it's extraordinary.
And I love it.
No doubt.
So anyway, just wanted to make that comment.
That's great.
Yes, Ben?
Beautiful museums.
My experience of going to the theater was sort of growing up was you bought your season ticket and you committed to the season and you sort of stuck with that theater. And it sounds like maybe the new model is going to be trying to catch everybody one by one and bring these people in and bring that people in. And do you think that will affect programming if you're not expecting any loyalty but sort of looking for people and having to entice them to every show individually?
Well, I think what Ben said about developing a reputation for what you're producing is the key to that. So if you know that you may not love the script, but you know that it's not going to be a shoddy production, that is going to be a great way to keep people coming back because they know that the experience they're going to have is going to be a positive one, even if they're not totally behind the storyline. I've read a lot of different organizations across the country, and my marketing director has backed this through several studies, are moving from a subscription plan to a membership plan, so that you are simply a member of this organization. You can come whenever you want, and that is maybe a new path. Don't you guys have memberships?
We do have memberships, and it really has to do with the different kinds of benefits that you get. So there's a basic subscription, and then as you go up in your level of membership, then you get the National Theater Live included, you get champagne receptions, everybody gets cookies, by the way. Nobody is denied their giant cookies, so don't worry. But yeah, we do have a membership model that has worked really well for us because people who are passionate want to support. When we've done our surveys, the main reason they say that they join is to support the company. Not so much to get discounts. They're really interested in being a part of what we do. And I think what you're saying is absolutely true. And we serve so many masters, or we're asked to serve so many masters. There's the foundations who are asking us to do as much as possible and reach as many people with as few dollars as possible. They want to see that ratio. We have the national, our national peers who are saying, how's your diversity going? Are you producing plays by women? We have our most passionate supporters. We have our board of directors. And then on top of that, we're told, oh, you need to draw younger audiences. You've got to get those younger audiences. And the only way to stay true is to work straight through your mission and keep your eye on what you do best, as opposed to trying to please that person and that person and that person and that person. I see some of these seasons where it's like when we have the one giant musical and the one this and the one that, And I don't know how you develop a passionate following that way. What you say is that you choose your identity, you choose your mission, and you stay clear to it. And you know, we're never going to capture every single person. You're going to have your people who say, I will only go to Stage West. And then you have your people who say, I will only go to Amphibian. Other people who say, I only like the ballet. Some people will like all of it, but we can't try to please every single person because as it is, it's really, don't you feel sometimes like a little pulled in a million directions?
But more often than not, I am experiencing people who say, you know, they'll come to me and say, I hate to tell you this, but this other theater has a great show on. And and they're at, you know, our space. And I said, well, that's great. I'm glad to hear it, you know, because the fact is that the more theater that you go to, the more likely you're going to support all the theaters. As long as you're going and you're a part of the conversation, that's what matters. So Amphibian and Stage West have partnered before. It wasn't a competition. It was a, hey, if you go see theater at Amphibian, then you're more likely to become a theater enthusiast, and then maybe you'll come to Stage West and vice versa. Same with all of the other theaters, and I'd like to think it's the same with dance and any other art form. The more you are willing to step out and try something new, the more likely you're going to have a more well-rounded experience in your life.
I agree with this gentleman, though, when he said about museums. Incredible museums here. I call up people and say, you know, why don't you come and see the ballet? Oh, you know, oh yeah, because we want to come and see the Kimbell. So what day are you on? So somehow people do know. I think the museums here are fabulous. In fact, I sleep here every night. I think it's so fun.
We do.
And
We
they have
great
cup
museums.
holders too.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, and picking up on Ben's point about the vibrancy of the arts community here, you know, at TCU, we sometimes have a bit of a struggle because the traditional things you grow your students and then you send them away. But now we have students that fall in love with Fort Worth. They come from away to come be in the city. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about, you know, our students, our graduates who want to pursue careers in the arts in our area, in our region, because we are a nationally visible university bringing students from far away that fall in love with our city.
The most important thing that we can do is work with them. It's the same with students from Baylor or UTA or Texas Wesleyan, UNT, is being willing to work with new people that you haven't worked with before. This past season at Stage West, 45% of our creative staff was brand spanking new to our space. And that is what is important to keeping people here. They may fall in love, but they may feel like they have to go elsewhere because they're not working. So if we give people a chance, then they're more likely to put their roots down, and then we all grow as a result.
It's incredibly important for theaters to keep actors around, and it's incredibly difficult, particularly mature male actors. When they hit their 30s, they want to get married, buy a house, whatever, and acting generally can't support that. But from the Greeks through Arthur Miller, the number of mature male roles, you know, just dominates the theater. And so it's extremely, extremely difficult to keep them around. But the interesting thing is, I once checked on this. I was trying to figure out how many equity actors there were in North Texas. And I found that there were more equity actors in this area than anywhere else between Mississippi and LA. And the reason for that is that there was enough commercial and TV work to keep them employed. I've known a number of actors who would get like 1 or 2 scenes in a movie, and that would be enough for a down payment on a house. And so they would stay because of that. But that's kind of a crapshoot, finding the right age at the right time, that kind of thing. But you're absolutely right. It's one of the key things for the future.
And our state legislature really needs to see the value of the film industry here. We used to have a thriving film commission that was dismantled, and it is a tragedy for our whole state because it was a huge amount of work that people had, and they defunded it, and it was basically taking a big stack of dollars and throwing it to other states. And so, you know, when you vote, pick those things in mind.
Just putting that out there.
I think that the model of you go to college in the arts and then you either choose LA or New York is a diminishing concept. There still is some of that, but I certainly have a lot of friends who have chosen all three things, New York, LA, or to stay here. The ones who stay here have a better quality of life and work so much more. We are able to draw actors from New York by promising them their equity card because they've been in New York for years unable to get their card. We say, okay, well, you know, our contract is this much money, and yes, you're going to be away from New York for 7 weeks, but you're going to walk away with your equity card. And boy, oh boy, suddenly they get really excited, and a lot of them want to stay.
It's important in New York when you go to auditions, the people who have agents go to the auditions first, then the people who have equity cards audition, and then the people who are non-equity. And that barrier, you can be sitting outside waiting hours to get to the audition if you don't have an equity card. So just being able to come here, get an equity card, and go back to New York means you're automatically moved up in terms of auditions.
I think one of the worst things nowadays is there's no arts education for children. So we're not growing people that are going to love the arts. You know, when I was at school in England, we had, when the opera came, or the ballet, or a play or something, there was always a list, and one of the teachers would get the students or call the parents, and we'd be taken to see things, you know. And we had art in the school, and a lot of produced plays in the school and things. Somehow we did a lot, whereas now that doesn't exist really anymore.
I want to take my cap off in that sense to Sue Barato over at the Bass Hall, because she has fought long and hard to make sure that it's only the younger grades usually, and Stage West does get to participate in the fall, bringing a classic to high schoolers. But there's that one program that does bring the opera, the symphony, I think the ballet, I thought.
We do?
Nutcracker, yeah.
Well, we're lucky having a school, so somehow we're...
It's just that there's not a lot in the schools.
Yeah. But in the schools, I think there should be some appreciation, whether it's painting or, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
I can speak a little on that. I'm a public school teacher. I teach high school theater. And there just isn't the funding for that. I work with Sue over at Bass Hall to try to get my kids who are in a higher level of poverty area to the arts. And there just isn't funding for it. We just don't have the money to get there. We also have a culture in my high school, which I won't say, that the arts are second fiddle. We're just not going to support them. I have been called into the principal's office several times about my commitments to my kids. I'm a theater director, and my kids need to be at rehearsals so that they know what they're doing. But they're on the football team or the basketball team or the cheerleader or something like that, to where they also need to be there, but how do we split those kids' times? And a lot of parents are saying, you're going to do sports or you're going to do something other than the arts. So it's just a whole culture that needs to be addressed.
Is that throughout the school system?
I would say yes. My fiance also teaches at another high school, and he deals with a lot of the same situations.
A couple of weeks ago, governor of a Midwestern state, I forget which one, basically said that he didn't feel he could push funding for the state university if it was going to interpretive dance. That he felt that the students should be only going into practical. Essentially, the university existed to get them jobs, and that was it. Yes.
would never assume that any teacher has time to take my phone call, for sure. Because most teachers that I have encountered are so busy and being contacted 20, 30 emails a day by people who need their attention. But I applaud the groups that, in what you're saying. That's great. And so maybe we are making progress in that regard. And so our younger generations are really going to be the ones who maybe will start to get some more enthusiasm broadly for the arts in our area.
We have a great outreach program too, and we have teachers that go out into the schools, certain schools, maybe your school, and they go and give movement classes and all that. And so I think that's been a very exciting thing for us to get involved in. So that's going bigger and bigger. Every year we get more and more schools involved in it, and they come and watch rehearsals in the studio. And so somehow it's good. And it's amazing. Some of the children are amazing what they ask, the questions.
I think every arts organization does have that outreach component, and but we can accomplish a lot more if we're supporting your arts programs or the school's arts programs and supplementing, because we don't have the resources to take it all on. I think often we're expected to take it all on.
One of the great things about this situation is we can continue the conversation upstairs, but your last question, you've been very patient.
Thank you so much. You spoke a little bit about marketing at the beginning of the program, but and I know everyone here is probably a very loyal arts patron, has been to all of these places, but the press coverage for performing arts and the Star-Telegram has been cut, the reviews have been cut, and so I just wanted to hear about what you're doing to kind of combat that or help people find out about what's going on at your organizations.
You know, what's happening, and maybe it'll be a temporary thing, I hope, with the Star-Telegram ending their arts reviews, is very unfortunate, and I'm sure that everyone at the Star-Telegram feels the same way. Certainly those reviewers who aren't getting to work do. But I am happy to say that the Star-Telegram is doing a feature on our next show, so there is some arts coverage. It's clear that they are trying to find a way to make their income stream work so that their paper can thrive. And we all feel, I think there's not a person in this room that does not want them to survive and thrive. But in the meantime, we've got to get a little creative. Certainly you need reviews for certain grants. And so we will be still looking to Art&Seek and Theater Jones and different publications, Facebook, different social media, to
The Fort Worth Weekly has started doing reviews again, which is great.
Yeah.
And I think we need to support if that's important to us. I'll tell you, the only word that seems to matter to them is clicks. So click on those articles that you want to see more of. And please click on fewer articles about popular culture.
Or else the whole online media will all be just cats. All right. Lots of cats. Click on cats.
Well, thank you. Can we thank our panelists? Thank you.